In this video, I'm going to show you how easy it is using PrusaSlicer and a Prusa printer to change filament colors and insert items into a 3D print. So this is what I'm going to work with. It's a Bliss Tactile Symbol for the all concept. It has a raised shape. It has the word all engraved on the front surface. And you can't see it right now, but there's an internal pocket for placing an RFID tag. My goal is to have the raised shape be white, though the exact color doesn't matter here when I'm slicing, only that it's a different color. So I want this raised shape to be white. I want everything else generally to be black eventually, but I want the bottom of the engraved all to also be white so that this stands out against the black surface here. So first thing I'll do is I'll slice this, and I'm going to get rid of that legend. All right, so we'll come down some layers here until we see the first layer where that raised shape begins to be printed right here. And in PrusaSlicer, what you see at any layer is what the layer will look like when it's finished. But when you insert an instruction, the instruction happens at the beginning of the layer. So if I insert a color change right now, it means that only starting at this point with these lines does the color change. So I go up here, I see this plus, and I'm going to right click on it and say add a color change. Choose a color. It really doesn't matter. What matters is what you have loaded into the printer. If I slide the slider back up, you can see that the entire raised shape is a new color from what is happening below it. My next step is to go to the bottom of the engraved all to see where that begins to print. And it's right here. I can zoom in. This is the first layer where the shape of the all is beginning to be printed. I'm going to insert a color change here as well. And I'll just use something contrasting, but not as heavy as black, I don't think. In fact, I think I'll just leave it this color that it is right now. Now I'm going to go down to the bottommost point at which I'm beginning to cover over that background for the all. So right here, the background for the all starts to print. This is what I want to make white again. And if we slide up, see that continues for several layers that may be necessary depending on the kind of filament you're using and how small or large the contrast is in color. So we basically got what we want right now as far as coloring. We do see that there's a residue of that color for all these layers, and it's going to show up on the outside of the symbol. Now I want to go down to the layer in which the internal cavity or pocket is first capped off. So here's that pocket for the RFID tag. And if I slide the slider upward, you see here it starts to get covered by a bridge layer. And remember, this is what happens this is what it looks like at the end of that layer. So I want to pause it at the start of this layer so I can insert the tag and have the walls be as tall as they're going to be around that pocket. So it's at this point that I want to insert a pause. Right click and say add pause. Prusa lets you put some words in here to remind you what you're supposed to be doing. However, I never pay attention to it anyway, because I know what I'm doing. I'm putting in an RFID tag. So I'm just going to say OK here. Prusa, as a courtesy, I guess, just inserts a single layer's worth of color here. It's not a real color change. The printer's not going to take you through the color change process. It's just to remind you that you do have a pause in the process of creating the print. And if I take that all the way back up, I can see this is what my final print will generally look like. Again, the colors aren't exact, because what really matters is what I load on the printer and what I swap to when I do the swap of colors. So there's the top of that little pocket, just showing a pause is going to happen right here. And then we're going to have a color change, and a color change. Slice it again. We'll export that into G-code, and we'll load it into the printer.
I just started the print. The display tells me I have 28 minutes before the change, which in this case means the insertion of the RFID tag. And since I'm going to be swapping between black and white a couple times, it's nice to have both colors ready to go above the printer. We'll come back in 27 minutes or so and watch the change take place, which is the insertion of the RFID tag. All right, in less than a minute we'll reach the pause that was placed into the G-code by PrusaSlicer. All right, so it's moving the head away from the print and it's extending the print bed outward. I can tell you by looking at the display that the print bed temperature is remaining constant and the extruder temperature is being allowed to fall, and that's because we don't want to have heat creep in the extruder, but we do want the print to remain affixed to the build plate, so we keep the temperature there. Now I'm going to press the little button and say resume print. It'll start by heating the extruder back up to 210, which is the temperature I've selected for this PLA print. And then it will restart the print or resume the print exactly where it stopped off, both in X, Y, and Z. And one of the things it's going to do in this layer is it's going to begin to cover over that little chamber where I put the RFID tag. This may seem laborious, taking all these steps, but recognize that most of the time you're printing more than one of these, and as long as they're using the same fundamental colors, they will all pause at the same point, and you'll be switching filaments at the same point. So it's not like you have to repeat all these steps each time you print a tactile symbol. All right, so my change time now looks, and this is actually a color change, is about 13 minutes away, so we'll resume when we get close to 13 minutes. All right, we're approaching the first color swap, and you'll notice that the system behaves a little differently for a color swap versus just a pause to insert something into the print. Mainly it's going to also take on the responsibility of extracting the current filament and loading the new filament and priming it until the color is proper. That may be one or two G-code commands that are sent to the printer, but those commands have to be supported somehow in firmware on the control board of the printer. So you're going to get different behavior from different printers. Some printers will ignore those commands altogether. Some may take them but do something completely different, or again still do nothing at all because they don't have the supporting firmware. But this is why I love Prusa printers. They have put so much thought into making the printer easy to use for things like this. All right, raises the head. Now it's moving the head forward and the piece backward. And the display says, please press the knob to unload the filament. And you can hear it beeping, so you could recognize there's something you need to do even if you're in another room. Press the knob, the filament comes out. I'm just going to feed it under here. And I'll prepare the other filament right now. It says, was the filament unload successful? And I'm going to say yes. Press the yes. Insert the filament, press the knob. I've already inserted it, pressing the knob. Sorry for the coughing. I think I picked something up at ATIA. So now it's feeding filament through, and the first thing we're seeing is a fair amount of black filament. Now it's asking me, is the color changed correctly? Well, I'm going from black to white, so that's quite a bit of filament I'm going to have to feed through to fully change the color. So I'm choosing color not correct. And it will again start feeding more filament through. And I just reach in there, kind of pull it aside. And we're getting pretty close. I think I may do one more, just for good measure. And now I'm going to say yes, the color has changed correctly, and I'm going to push the button. The extruder temperature and the bed temperature did not change that entire time. All right, a new filament swap, and you'll see exactly the same behavior that we saw a moment ago. Pressing the knob to unload. Put it underneath. In the interim time there, I trimmed the tip of the black filament so that it would feed nicely into the extruder. And it won't take as many attempts to clear out the white here, simply because black will overwhelm it. In fact, I really could just continue right now. I'm going to. All right, time for the final filament swap. And just think for a moment how difficult this process would be if the head didn't move away from the print job, instead just rose up in Z. And while you're doing all this swapping and purging, that molten plastic is falling directly onto your print. And if it does move in Z, how do you get it back to the right height to continue the print? All this is just taken care of for you by Prusa. All right, 4 minutes, and then it'll be done. Okay, the print finished. I can wait for it to cool down, or I can just take it and bend the flex sheet. Rid of that purge line. There we have it. The all symbol with a white background engraved word all.